Imagine you were 18, good-looking, and in desperate need for money. To save your family from homelessness, what would you be willing to do? Well, 2 years ago, my mom got very sick and couldn't leave her bed anymore. That's why she lost her job, and we couldn't afford rent anymore. I knew I had 1 week left to make some money, or all three of us, including my 4-year-old sister, would be kicked out of the house and would have to beg on the streets. And that's super dangerous here in El Salvador, because there are tons of gangs roaming in the streets. They can't wait to find helpless families like ours to exploit them in all kinds of cruel ways. But finding a job that paid enough for rent and mom's medical bills wasn't going to happen here in this third world country I'm living in. I was desperate and willing to do anything, maybe even, you know what. But then I had a better idea. I sent a friend request on Facebook to a guy called Alberto. Everyone in school knew him because his rich dad was both a successful businessman and an influential politician. We started chatting and I asked him out on a date. Of course, he agreed. I mean, he was only 15 and I was 18. It was so awkward meeting him because I was much taller than him. But I knew what I had to do, so I acted like I had a huge crush on him, and he seemed to enjoy it a lot. I said, "Any plans for tonight?" "Not yet, but you can come by my home tonight and watch a movie with me." Well, that's what we did. And while we were sitting on a couch, I went close to him, gave him a kiss, and said, "If you want to date me, I expect you to treat me well. I want a guy that spends his money on me, because I'm a high-maintenance girl." Alberto responded, "Sure, no problem." And that's how our relationship started. However, he could only give me $1,000 a month. It wasn't even enough for my mom's medication. So at night, while Alberto was asleep, I would search his house for valuables that I could sell. I normally stole stuff from his dad's room. I figured no one would notice. But even though I was making enough money now to take care of my family, my life at school became hell. Dating a guy 3 years younger than me was extremely embarrassing. He always held my hand publicly and made me make out with him in front of others. Everyone called me a gold digger, and I guess they were right. But no one knew that I was doing it for my family. Even my former best friends turned their backs on me. Meanwhile, Alberto was a huge jerk. He had that rich kid arrogance, and to him I was nothing but a toy. On weekends, he often took me shopping to buy me the dresses he liked. Then I had to wear them to school so he could show me off to his friends. He also asked me things like, "Why are you so attracted to me?" And I would answer, "Because you are so handsome, strong, and attractive." Meanwhile, all his 15-year-old friends were listening and giggling. Well, if things couldn't get worse, Alberto's dad wanted to talk to me. He brought me into his room and said, "I know you've been stealing from me." Then he went to the door and locked it. Now I couldn't escape. I was petrified and said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't want to do it, but I needed the money for my mom's medication." "I don't care about your mother. You're gonna pay me back." "But how?" "You better find a way, my sweetheart." There was this awkward silence, and the way he looked at me made me feel uncomfortable. He said, "You are an adult, so you can get a job to pay off your debt. But there's another way. You see, my wife and I have been arguing a lot recently, so I'm gonna make you an offer. If you become my second girlfriend, I'm gonna take care of you and your financial worries." Eduardo was quite good looking, so I didn't think twice and said, "Fine! How are we gonna do it?" I thought that this was the solution to all my problems. I broke up with Alberto the same day and started meeting his dad, Eduardo, a few times per week. He normally pretended to go on business trips so his wife wouldn't get suspicious. Of course, I felt bad for his wife. Sometimes she called Eduardo while he laid next to me in bed, and he would tell her how exhausting his work was, even though he was actually cheating on her. But I guess she didn't believe him, because one day, his wife knocked on our hotel door. I had no clue and opened it. When she saw me, she started crying and screaming. She ran towards Eduardo and started punching him. He said, "It's no big deal, I don't love her. She's only a mistress." "But she was dating our son, and now you are dating her? You disgusting pig! How can you do this to me?" You probably think that he stopped seeing me after his wife found out about us. But he didn't. We kept seeing each other just as before. He didn't seem to care how much he was hurting his wife. She even sent me letters each week, begging me to stop seeing her husband. I felt incredibly guilty, but I didn't have much of a choice. And after a few months of dating, Eduardo told me he was willing to divorce his wife if I wanted to take her place. I gotta be honest, I was disgusted by him. How could someone betray his wife of 20 years so badly? I declined the offer. In fact, I wanted to run away from him as far as I could, but I needed his financial support. Well, at least until my mom died. Suddenly there were no more medical bills, and it was such a relief. I left Eduardo and took a job as a cashier to take care of my little sister. But it wasn't the life I had dreamed of. Working 10 hours a day and only making $300 per month while having to take care of a little kid on the side was too much for me to handle. So I went back to Eduardo and started dating him again. This time, it was more serious though. He rented me and my sister a nice apartment to live in and started spending half of his time with us. We even talked about me getting pregnant. At first I was hesitant, but he promised to spend half of his money on our second family if I should carry his baby. He also said his son Alberto didn't have the intelligence to manage his family's money once he was gone, so he was still looking for another son. To be honest, it all sounded too good to be true. He was probably smearing honey around my mouth, but what other choice did I have? None, so I finally agreed. I know what most of you are thinking of me. I'm a terrible person for destroying another family, but most of you have never lived in absolute poverty while having to take care of a small kid. So please don't judge me too hard. In the end, I never wanted this life. I wish I could meet my dream guy like those girls in Disney movies, but this is real life, not a fairy tale. By the way, I recently gave birth to our baby. It's a boy, and Eduardo seems to love him a lot. He spends 5 days of the week with us, which means he had almost completely given up on his old family. So, maybe understandably, his wife wasn't happy about it. She sent some crook to my apartment to assassinate me. Luckily, the guy struggled to get through the door and I used my chance to jump to the neighboring balcony to escape. It was so scary though, and when I told Eduardo about what happened, he flew into a rage. In the same night he visited his old family and handled things his way. I don't really want to talk about it, because if he is willing to hurt them, he is willing to hurt us too. But at least I have Eduardo all for myself now. I mean, he can be a huge jerk and constantly threatens to leave me if I don't do exactly what he likes. He, for example, asks me to massage him all the time like I'm his maid. And then out of nowhere, he gets annoyed at me and calls me an uneducated bimbo. He says he's more attracted to independent women who have their own career and don't need his money. But at the same time, he doesn't want me to go to college or get a job. I'm sure he'll leave me for a younger girl someday, but until then, I think it's worth it. Maybe life is just complicated and messy like that.